So here we are with another bunch of documents that surprisingly found its way into my hands. They were just piled on top of each other, and here we are. But before we start discussing some, I've never broached this subject with you, and some of the other researchers that you've worked with, you did quite a bit of corresponding with Hank Albarelli.
Yeah. I think he was a good investigator, a good researcher, he's a good digger. You know, he dug into a lot of things. I think his best book, I think, was Terrible Mistake, you know, about Olson.
Okay.
I thought that was a good, well-researched. It took him almost 10 years.
Harry Olson?
No, the Olson that was jumped out of a window, and he was working on mind control stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. In the early 50s.
Right, okay. Right, that's
so
before my age.
MK
Ultra
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So he did a lot of work on that, which I thought was very good and was heavily researched, good footnotes, good sources. Yeah, excellent book, but a very big book. You know. But I would recommend that book.
Yeah?
Yeah. And, you know, I see all the stuff about
Lafitte,
and Hank sent me pages from the Lafitte diary way back, maybe 10 years ago, I think.
Okay. What was your take on it?
I don't know. I mean, I still don't know. I don't dismiss it because I don't know enough about it.
The problem is that they're not authenticated somehow. That's the issue. Prevents it from becoming gospel as such. I mean, it's treated as gospel, but
you think there's a credibility issue there?
Yeah. Well, I think there's many that think that is a credibility issue.
I'm not following it.
I mean, because the thing is also the heritage of where it comes from and through what company it came from. A company that was renowned for selling fake stuff and so forth. You know, so it's.
What company was that?
The company that did, you know what, now I lost the name and now I'm going to be, now other people at the other end of the camera going, ha! But basically, I think Greg Parker did a lot of research about this about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
And he found out that the company that is involved with the sale of these things, items, were specialized in World War II related items and Central Intelligence Agency related items and so forth. Historic items as such. Diaries. Diaries and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's where basically that particular company has been accused of quite a few times about selling fakery, false stuff. The problem with the Lafitte diaries, in a nutshell, is that they haven't been authenticated. Now, all I know at this point is that people claim that the diaries, that there was a British TV production company that wanted to do a documentary about these things.
Okay.
And this is all shrouded into mystery and smoke and mirrors and so forth. And everyone wants just a really simple answer. Is this for real? That's the problem. Nobody can say. And the people that can say that they're bound by NDAs and so forth. Now, that doesn't help the whole thing, whether it's going to be real or not. The problem I have with it is that certain individuals treat it as real and basically keep bringing that material up in the Education Forum posts, for instance. I'm sorry to say, but I think the Education Forum is filled to the brim with speculators. Yeah, it's terrible. It's really bad. You know, if they made a demand that said, like, anyone who posts something has to post evidence of what they say, that forum would be really thin spread, quite thin, in all honesty. All I have is I believe, I think, and so forth, and it's just, you know, it might be true, but that's not good enough for me, you know. Well, I mean, what I've got here has got more value than all the posts on that forum together. That's my problem with it. it's worse than reading a book where you actually read one opinion of one person who went through the material. Here I'm going through something that maybe one or two people go through the material and actually have an informed opinion, but there are 15 to 20 others who basically just jump into a thread, and they either railroad the thread and start talking about the autopsy when we should be talking about whether Otto Skorzeny and his Nazi buddies were on Dealey Plaza, Dealey Plaza to shoot Kennedy. They derail it, or they just offer an opinion. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? We've got 6 billion people on this earth, and they all have an opinion about something, about when you broach a subject as such, whether it's religion or it's a crime or, you know, whatever. And it's just like, for me, it's almost an absolute waste of time. And almost. It's very, I just call it 95%. And I don't want to trawl through all that before I finally find out something, right, there's something I can do with something. I've gotten to a point where I just dismiss 95% of the people there that write stuff, and then I know certain posters, when they bring something, I know it's going to be informative, it's going to be of use. It's getting to that point where you just basically have half a dozen people at this point on that forum where I go, those guys I'll give time of the day, where the other 30, 40 odd, I just can't be asked to read stuff at all anymore and just move on. And I know that's drastic, and
I think, you know, it seems to me that all sorts of people that write about intelligence matters can be open to that accusation. I think Hank, as far as he could do, I remember him, I must have hundreds of emails with Hank. And he visited with me for 3 days, and you get a sense of a person. And I think, it seems to me, he was a good, diligent, he tried to fact check, but with intelligence stuff, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it is difficult.
It's really, really hard. And yeah, I mean,
well, we've spoken about the euphemistic language in the first place already, about in the documents, so that makes it already a problem from the word get-go, especially when it comes to intelligence stuff, related matters. But what irked me and a handful of others was basically the fact that it's treated as gospel, and I have to read through paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and I'm going, yeah, that's all fine and dandy, if it is authentic stuff, if it is written as such, and if that small word with that massive meaning is just lingers above all the time, then there, you know, I mean, the fact is that people should just refer to it.
But I see, you know, it seems to me that everybody has a responsibility when they're researching to, you know, to really take care not to be sucked into disinformation or misinformation. And it's, you know, it can be very seductive and very attractive. You know, if you get this stuff and it's pushed out, and it can look very good. It can look very good.
Misinformation can even be hidden in this.
Sure.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's everywhere. So, you know, and that makes you having to double check and treble check. And, you know, when people come with like a one source thing, I'm going, you're wasting everyone's time, because an average journalist will say, no, you need 2 or 3 sources before you can finally put it forward.
Your friend John Newman talks about multiple attestations.
Attestations. Fair enough, but you know, but that's what it is. You have to find as many sources as possible. You know, if somebody tells one story, and if somebody comes with one source, yeah. I mean, this is one thing that surprised me recently from the documents that I did from you, was that the amount of, when I did your Vesiana documents, Dave Borland has got them now, how many documents were dealing with the sighting of Phillips and Vesiana in Dallas? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not just 1 or 2 documents, there were 10 to 20 documents that make mention of that.
Yeah.
And yet, it can't be confirmed or as such in that extent, you know. And, you know, like you say, Vesiano is an opaque character. And then, but now you start thinking about, looking at the documentation and see all the so-called documents about the meeting, the so-called meeting as such. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make things easier. I mean, you never know for 100% what it is about.
It does seem to me that Vessiano probably did touch on that. I mean, other people have different views on that. It seems to me that Vessiano did meet with somebody in September of '63. Whether it was Phillips, that's a difficult one. Do I think Phillips was connected to Vessiano? Absolutely, no question. Do I think other people were connected to Vessiano? Absolutely, no question. Certainly, when I see the interview with Guy Vitale, the file, you have to understand, the file that the CIA released eventually, I'm not talking about the files that went to the Church Committee, the Swiker Hart Committee, which we've never seen. Those files were so redacted that the guy that was working on them absolutely jumped up and down and went crazy. Tom Moore, what are they doing? Sending us reams of Vessiano documents which are redacted, completely redacted. What are they doing? You have to ask the question, what were they doing? Sending to a Senate committee Vessiano documents, almost totally redacted. When you see the documents the CIA eventually released on Vessiano, which were just innocuous documents, there's not much there. You've got like an HQ case officer there with Calvin Hicks, and then you've got a field case officer probably with Guy Vitale. But when you fast forward and you look at Guy Vitale's interview with Gaten Fonzie and another guy, it becomes interesting because Vitale suddenly seems to get gross amnesia. That he's had nothing to do with Vessiano. This is what he says. He wouldn't have anything to do with someone like Vessiano because they were too politically important. Then you'll find stuff in these boxes, these boxes that you're taking now. You find Vitale was a case officer, one of the case officers for Alberto Fernandez. Vitale tells Fonzie he would never have anything to do with a politically prominent Cuban. He's the guy that's working Alberto Fernandez, who was head of the UR. So right there is a great big fat lie. Right there, great big fat lie. So you have to have suspicions about Vitale when he says that. And this business about, we didn't have anything to do with him because there's not much there, he's just a source of information, which is what CIA came up with in the end. He was just SOI, source of information. In other words, nothing much there. Go away. But there was more there. And I think Vitale was the key. Guy Vitale was the key, along with David Utley Phillips. I mean, there are other people there. And if you look at, I think you probably have the photographs, the big blow-up photographs, do you?
Some of them.
Of Guy Vitale?
I have some photos, yeah. I mean, it's
He's a guy, he's on the front of his book, written by Vitale's nephew, which is called Echoes in the Wind. And he's swinging a baseball bat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look at that face, and then you look at David Utley Phillips' face.
Similarities.
Very, very similar. Very similar features. You've got the sunken eyes and all the rest of it in that photograph. And I get back to that meeting that Fonzie attended with Antonio Vessiano, where they met David Atlee Phillips. And when they came out from the meeting, Gaten Fonzie says to Bastiana, "Is it him? Is it him?" You know, having seen him. And he says, "No, it's not him, but he knows."
Yeah, I remember reading it in the last investigation. I mean, that was quite a pivotal moment in that book.
Really sort of, I mean, I think it was, you know, a real long, tormented relationship, really, because he's clearly linked to CIA, but in such a way that you're not going to see documents. We talked about that. You're not going to see documents which, there it is on the page.
It'd be too good to be true.
You know, it's, you know, the relationship with Bastiano is a prescribed and limited operation, and getting into that is very difficult. If you could get into the counterintelligence staff P&L files, but we'll never see it. We'll never see a cover sheet.
I've got it easy with the DPD and the FBI when I go through the documents as such, because it's pretty much straightforward. This is the Central Intelligence Agency matters. It's just on a whole different level. I mean, like we've mentioned many times before, the euphemistic language, the lack of detail, the cryptonyms. So there are several levels of secrecy. It's not just like we're going to do it like that and that's it. No, we've got this part, that part, and that part, and we put that together as such.
No, I think all operatives are trained to be like that. They have to be like that. You know, they can't. They have to be opaque. And like you said, the language has to be euphemistic.
Yeah.
Even on the internal traffic, cable traffic, it's just like, you know, you have to get behind, as Joseph Burkholder Smith says, you have to get beyond the euphemistic language.
We now go back to researchers and stuff. I mean, we spoke about Albarelli. It's cool.
Yeah, I think you know, just emphasising the fact that the guy did. I remember we had a lot of interchange and, you know, correspondence about June Cobb, because Hank had got in touch with her and in the end, it had quite a good friendship with her. So, I mean, I think
Did he interview her?
Yeah, he did some good work, really good work. And if you gave him a lead, he would really jump on it. He'd jump all over it. You know,
that's good.
I remember I gave him a lead to.
Who else has made an impression? Like, if you talk about Albarelli in favourable terms, fair enough.
I do. Yeah.
So who else do you think is on the same level as such that has impressed you?
I think Dan Hardway works very hard. I think John Newman, but you know, some people may disagree with some of the latest work by John, but I think he's done some really good stuff, very good stuff. You know, I think the book JFK and Vietnam is a very important book to read and to understand. And then for me, the journey was, in research terms, came out of Oswald and the CIA. He looked at so many documents which were, back then, were almost completely redacted, and made a terrific job of putting that book together in an understandable way. Excellent book.
That is a problem or a massive issue, to turn all that paperwork into something like as a summarization and trying to make it understandable and clear cut for Joe Average, basically, to read through all.
I don't think the agency made, and still today, it doesn't make it easy. You know, they're being compelled to release stuff, but you know, you just found all the Rampart stuff, that even the stuff that you've got, there's still parts of that Rampart stuff which is still redacted after all these years. And I know the reason is because some of the names are going to be companies and corporations which are still utilized by CIA to this day. You know, the one they let go by mistake was Belova Watch. You know, on that Campisi document where they because the question to the CIA cover division was about Joe Campisi, the mafia guy. They then sought to explain that it wasn't Joe Campisi. Well, they had records of a Campisi, or I think it was a Joe Campisi, but the records applied to a guy that they were utilising in Belova Watch. You know, for cover purposes, they were using Belova Watch. And you think that relates to nothing until the Bobby Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy, the party that was held, it was Belova Watch.
The conference was a Belova Watch conference.
Yeah.
Big coincidence there.
Yeah, it's quite a coincidence. Yeah, let's not start thinking like conspiracy theorists here for a second.
But if you wanted to drop people in undercover, what better way? You've got a company you use for cover, having a conference at the same time that Bobby Kennedy is there giving his, you know, bit suspicious.
Anyone else? Besides Newman?
I don't know. There's a lot of people over the years.
I mean, I really like Larry Hancock's work. You know.
Yeah, he does a lot of deep work.
Yeah.
It's good. Larry's good.
I mean, especially like with the Cubans and all that. You know, that was really. I said it to him as well over the phone or through a meeting. That you know, if anyone got close to the shooters,
the Cuban stuff is such a huge area, massive, just on its own to try and get to grips with.
But it was so. You know why I didn't understand why it was allowed to be so splintered. All these movements.
Control.
Yeah, but of course, we discussed this last time about the control, wanting to have control over all these, but never like have something presented as a united front. You know, because again, I think that would have made more of an impression than having all these splintered groups going out on their own and mess about.
Yeah, but that's not the way they work, is it?
No.
You know, I don't think that's the way they work. You know, it's the agency is just happy to have control of. It's okay because I just have that document in my hand about control.
Right, let's talk about a couple of these documents while we have some time. Did you put them over there?
Oh yeah.
Are they the ones that we want to discuss?
Well, this was an interesting one. This was. No, I went to the Library of Congress and tried to get this guy's papers.
Howard Liebengut.
Now the person that was dealing with it.
Irene Marr.
I just don't get what the work she did was just.
What? Good or bad?
Just not very good.
Sloppy.
Not very good.
Right.
Really, all this stuff. Note, I also reviewed the file on Frank Sturgis, files on Richard Howells, but they contain nothing relevant to the assassination. Well, it's not that. It's the individuals that are relevant to the assassination. The perspective is all wrong.
Yeah, that is.
But when I go there, you have to have permission from the Liebengut family to look at these papers. So
right.
I never got that. They wrote off for me. I checked in with them. Still didn't get anything. So if anybody's listening and they want to go to the Library of Congress and try and get the Liebengut papers, please do so, because Howard Liebengut was the lead guy on investigating Antonio Veciana for the Select Subcommittee on Intelligence.
Oh.
And he's, by the way, he's not even mentioned. It's not even mentioned.
No, but we've got Marita Lawrence.
Yeah, great. Just what you want. also took. You must have a lot of this because I copied a lot of it in the Mexico files, FBI Mexico files, to do with
Oswald and visiting. I mean, I tell you what, from
how he got into Mexico and how he exited Mexico.
the whole Laredo thing, the bus. But
So-
I'm absolutely shocked by the amount of documentation that is available from, well, this is Department of State, Central Intelligence Agency, FBI,
Everybody.
almost everyone, about Lee Harvey Oswald going to Mexico City. And then I remember you saying years ago, I don't want to get involved in that because it's a swamp.
It is.
And that's a pretty accurate description of the whole thing. It is a swamp. I mean, from what I've read, I mean, the whole Laredo thing, the people that were in the bus with him and all of that, it doesn't really,
It's difficult stuff.
it doesn't really stick together as a story, and basically nails Oswald as the person who was actually on that bus as such. But
It almost seems like a diversion to me.
yeah, I could be dead wrong, but I mean, I just looked at it and read it, and I was like, nah, it just doesn't add up. And then the thing with the voice on the phone, the tapes, the embassy film cameras, you know, I mean, but that, you know, that's my opinion. But I'm just, I know that David Josephs has been going into Mexico City, and
It's hard work.
yeah, I mean, this is like a lifetime's job just to go through the paperwork, because there is absolutely tons of this stuff
Lots of stuff.
on just Oswald and Mexico City. You know, it's just massive. I'm glad I don't have to go through all that. Lee Henry Oswald. Yeah.
Yeah, and people always say, you know, it's the early stuff that matters. You know, look at the date on that. I mean, so,
That was September. No, November 23rd.
yeah. So that's early information coming in. That's where the story isn't quite cooked.
Yeah.
They're still looking.
What I find interesting is that the alias O.H. Lee is mentioned here on the 23rd. So that's the day after Beckley, when the name O.H. Lee is also mentioned in some scribbled note.
Yep.
As such.
You know, as we were talking about the Dulles, what I call the Dulles watchword, which came very early on into people working in the Western Hemisphere division.
Right.
See, this is a classic euphemistic language cable here. You know, part 2, the paragraph 2. Well, I suppose I better read one, because it says, this is Alberto Fernandez plans to, well, they give his cryptonym.
This is from JM Wave, November the 22nd, 61.
It says, plans to see Hurwitz in ZR Metal, Washington, D.C. That's Washington, D.C. So Hurwitz was the State Department guy responsible for Cuban affairs. Only reason appears by Hurwitz's accessibility and desire of maintaining direct channel to State Department for political purposes. We desire to cut off this contact basis. It limits our control. So it's control.
Can't be more direct than that.
No, there you go. Great document. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of documents like that.
AM Denim. AE Denim.
AM.
No, it says AE.
No, it's wrong.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Bloody government officials who can't spell correctly. What the heck? No wonder they refer to him as Lee Henry Oswald. There's quite a few documents actually that mention Lee Henry Oswald.
So these are the creme de la creme stuff I picked out, which is, I think, is very significant. tells you a lot.
Mr. Scalzo.
Yeah, you see,
He's interesting.
that's a lot of his stuff gets
John Scalzo.
people just because there's many pages, and it's to do with what seems like obscure, unrelated stuff, but it's very relevant, his stuff. And he talks here, you can see what I've got the underlining I put here. You know, Mickey Goldsmith asked him the question, we recently introduced an employee, interviewed really, as I mentioned earlier today, indicating that looking at his records, every indication on that record would be that he had retired from the agency. This is Snyder in the mid-50s, when actually he had been with the agency throughout, and they continued one way or the other. Whether it was to be paid by the agency or by the State Department, he was still working for the agency. There was no record of his agency connection at Langley. And then Scalzo says, well, he may say that, but I do not believe it. There would certainly be files on him in the operational branches which were concerned with him. He may have...
Which have been purged from his normal personal
records.
And
But
so he would have been continued in
operational
operational
files.
files. Which
see,
may have been
and that's
existed in only one file in the branch.
See, that's a big tell sign there, because that's one segment of CI which is excluded to researchers. We cannot get operational files. They're just like beyond us. There's there was a congressional amendment which was made that's protected CIA operational files. We can never look at them, and they're like huge. They would be a huge help to us.
Yeah, wouldn't they be?
Yeah.
Operational files.
So this is very
Are they
good.
always excluded?
These pages I copied here for Scalzify are really interesting, because there's a debate on how they hide people, how the agency hides people.
Are they always excluded? Operational files?
I have to say there's one exception, and that's the Bayo Pauli files. You do get an operational file there, and I think there are 2 volumes, 2 big files. The CIA Historical Review Group, in discussions with the Director of Operations, Clandestine Services, did agree for, there's a term they used, enhanced historical understanding, EHU. So those were allowed. And boy, they are interesting files. You must have copied those.
Probably.
I think I copied every page. So it's a lot of material.
Found gold.
Yeah, it was original material too in the files. You know, yellow paper, pink paper, blue paper. It's all original stuff. You know, Ted Shackley documents. Great stuff. And it's like, you know, it's the meat and drink that we always look for and never get. Which is a shame.
Yeah, because it just explains it as such. Yeah.
So you've got an interesting cross-dressing of stuff.
Yeah, well.
Maybe you should copy those separately for people. You know, make it a separate category. I don't know what you would call it.
No, you know what? The way it works, it's very hard.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There's 7 boxes.
7 boxes.
There's, you know, because of you have been at other archives as well. I mean, ideally, I would just have a Rift-based archive, but that doesn't really help most of us. Most of us will search by name.
Right.
So I basically put the key people's names into the title, and I put the date of the document in. So I start with the organization. So if it's an HSCA document, or it's the FBI or if it's FBI document that is being released through the HSCA, that goes HSCA, FBI. Some example: James Hosty, and I'm calling it April 77. So April the 15th, 77. So that's what I do, because I know that the text is being recognized by OCR, but sometimes the quality of the documents, I don't know whether that permits happening as such. So that's why I came up with a system like that. And the same is with the dating. American way of dating is first a
Backwards,
month.
yeah.
It's backwards compared to us. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to call it April 16, 1960 or 76, because then that's mutual. Everybody understands then, because instead of just using numbers. So and also the fact that you have been to other archives where there are no RIF numbers present, So I thought I need something that's generic and where Joe Average can just go, well, you know what? I want to know everything on Michael Malone, for instance, JP Malone. And so if you put that in, you will find that name, not just into the title, but also in combination with the content inside the document as such. So that's, because I had to think of something like, I need to find something that is compromising with all types of documents that you've got, and make sure that also the way the technology works, that enables the person to basically find it. So in the beginning, they'll probably see the first 20 or 30 documents with the name mentioned into the title, but then underneath there may be up to 100 documents underneath that
Charles.
where that name is mentioned. Cut!